the dial, turn it loud. Miami's pride, make us proud. CanesWear crew, you hear the crowd. Hurricanes ain't backing down. Every play, every score, raising bets and raising roar. Rocking orange, green galore. All for one and one for four. We got FTSN, taking names, win it again. Podcast fam, till the end. Tune in, now let's begin.
Yo, what is going on, Canes fans? It is your boy, Brad Tejeda, host of the CanesWear Daily Podcast, only on the Fins Talk Sports Network, right here on the YouTube channel. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And if you need any CanesWear apparel or Inter Miami, Miami Dolphins, Miami Marlins, any South Florida sports team, you guys know exactly where to shop. Only at CanesWear.com, 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida. Guys, yesterday we had a little bit of technical difficulties on our show for Monday. So today we will be recapping yesterday's show, along with giving you a doubleheader, not only today's show currently, but tonight, as usual, every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. We do our live show with me, Brett, Cliff, Armando, and usually we got a couple special guests. Tonight's special guest will be joined by, again, John Michaels of State of Miami Pod. Also does tremendous work over on the ESPN radio. So shout out to our guy, John Michaels, who will be talking to Canes football with us later tonight. Not only breaking down the Wake Forest win, but also this huge matchup against Syracuse this weekend. But I want to go on a little bit of rant this evening before our show tonight. Just so I don't kind of hog the show later on tonight, I want to get a lot of things off my chest. But first off is this, folks. Big time dub for the Miami Hurricanes and a huge, huge, huge game from Lance Guidry, this defensive staff, and this defense of football team on Miami. Talk about a 42-14 victory over Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Last home game for the seniors. Last game at home in Hard Rock Stadium for our guy Cam Ward. And man, did this team show out. You know, when you talk about the first drive of the game for Miami, especially on the offensive side of the ball, whether it was Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, Elijah Arroyo, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, the list goes on and on. It seemed like that first drive, our offense was exactly what we thought it would be, humming on all cylinders. We were really picking apart that defense for Syracuse that first drive. Pretty much anywhere Cam Ward wanted to go with the football, we were able to do that. Nice drive led to some points. And then on the flip side, first drive for Wake Forest, we all knew, folks, if you watch our show, if you watch any other shows, we knew going into this game against Wake Forest, the guy that you had to stop, the guy you needed to key on was Damon Claiborne, number one running back for Wake Forest. And we saw after that first drive, not only what he was able to do on the offensive side of the football, but also on special teams with that long 100-plus yard return on the Miami Hurricanes. We saw not only Damon Claiborne first drive, but we also saw the miscommunication from the defense on that first drive leading up to that Wake Forest touchdown at that first beginning of the first quarter. And we were sitting back watching this game, folks, and we were like, oh my goodness, did this defense change? Did this defense listen to not only the critiques of fans, but obviously what you hear from Lance Guidry and some of these staff members in press conference? They knew the same thing that we knew, Cane fans watching this game, what they needed to work on, what needed to be achieved. Well, guess what, folks? After that first drive, man, oh man, I'm talking about a defense that only gave up 40 total yards in the second half with 0 points. A defense that held Wake Forest to 0 passing yards in the second half. This is for all the haters of Lance Guidry, all the fans in our own fan base that still, even to this day, 3 days after we get the 42-14 dub over Wake Forest, the fans that still don't want to give respect where it's due. Yes, weeks ago, week prior, Lance Guidry and this defense, by all means, they deserve all the criticism, folks. But when you give them criticism, you also got to praise when they do the right things, right? And this team, I'm talking about after that first big score of Damon Claiborne on that special teams, return touchdown. Our defense, interception, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, punt, turnover on downs, 3 and out, turnover on downs, and another 3 plays to end the game with a huge 42-14 victory. And we saw our offense start to come alive in that second half, definitely in that third and fourth quarter. Everything was humming, especially the running game, which we'll get to later as a huge focus going into the Syracuse game. But we've never had issues, in my opinion, when you watch this offense play. We haven't really had issues running the football on teams. The problem is we don't continue to run the football. We start to steer away from it. I don't know if it's because we're starting to play from behind or if we're wanting to throw the football a lot more. But this was a game in particular where you saw the 3-headed monster and Martinez, Fletcher, and Jordan Lyle, who had a huge coming out party. They're talking about a guy that had 7 carries, 100-plus yards, and a touchdown as a true freshman right out of St. Thomas Aquinas. This roster and this team was definitely hitting it on all cylinders in that second half of the football game, and it was a huge win for Miami. I think this was a huge momentum and confidence boost, particular for the defensive side of the football. Guys like Kiko Mainoa, who really needed to step up. Guys like Mish Powell, who really needed to step up. Those 2 individuals in particular really showcased what we all thought they could do for this football team. And I mean, a guy in Kiko Mainoa who probably had one of his career high games as a Miami Hurricane, led the team with 12 tackles, 7 solo. And our guy, Mish Powell, who obviously had 3 tackles, a sack, an interception for a touchdown. Great play by Mish Powell as well. But other guys I want to give some credit and kudos to, right? Akeem Mesidor, right off the bat, in my opinion, was probably the best all-around player on defense this past weekend. 7 tackles, 3 solo, a sack, a tackle for a loss. Akeem Mesidor lining back up on that edge for the defensive side of the football. It seems like that is where his home needs to be, and I'm hoping leading up to the Syracuse matchup, we see a lot of number 3 on that in pass rusher, right? Another guy I want to give kudos to, CJ Clark, Dylan Day, Ahmad Moten. You boys really balled out and showcased anytime you had the opportunity and got the plays, you guys did just that, right? And I mean, especially a guy like Ahmad Moten, number 99, who just each week, the past few weeks, just seems like he's continuously building on not only the confidence, but what he's bringing to the table on the football field. I hope to see a lot more 99 as well in this Syracuse game. But guys, 2 players in particular that you didn't see a lot from in this Wake Forest game, and yet our defense was still dominant. Number 9, Tyler Barron, right? Almost non-existent, probably only had 2 or 3 snaps throughout the whole football game. This was a guy that leading up, to this season was a guy we got out of the transfer portal. I'm sure we spent some money on the young man. We saw that first game against Florida, how much of a monumental difference a guy like him made. But ever since then, especially the last 3-4 weeks, the guy has not only been non-existent, but it seems like offenses are really keying in on a guy like him that when he's in the game, you run straight at him. And unfortunately, you didn't see a lot of Tyler Barron this past weekend, but you saw a defense that stepped up and stopped the run of a Damon Claiborne in this Wake Forest offense, right? Another guy you didn't see, number 19, Deani Hill. Another guy that it seems like when he is on the field, offenses go right at him, whether it's pass interference calls, holding calls, or just miscues, misassignments, miscommunication. That's another guy you didn't see much from in this Wake Forest game. And again, defense still stepped up, still did their job. Like I mentioned before, all the 3 and outs, all the turnovers, all the communication assignments that we were missing in prior weeks, and especially on that first drive against Wake Forest, they buckled down very quickly. They made the right changes, and Lance Guidry and this defensive staff, kudos to you guys and this defensive team for really stepping up against Wake Forest. On the other side of the ball, like I mentioned before, Jordan Lyle, 7 carries, 100-plus yards, and a touchdown, averaged 16 yards per carry. Man, this is a team that has been balanced for quite a while, right? And like I mentioned before, it just seems like we haven't relied heavy on that running game when needed. Going back to the Florida State game was probably the last time where we kind of went into a game plan right from the beginning and said, hey, we're gonna pound the football. We believe our trench bullies, and our running game is going to just wear you down, and we don't necessarily need Cam Ward to be Cam Ward. I think, again, We'll talk about the Syracuse matchup in a little bit, but this is a Syracuse team that has one of the worst rushing defenses in the country and also one of the worst rushing offenses in the country. So running the ball and stopping the run for Syracuse is something that they've been abysmal at all year. And I expect Miami to really go into that Syracuse game this upcoming weekend and really start off by running the football and really creating a lot of opportunities for a guy like Cam Ward where he doesn't necessarily have to win the game by himself, right? But I think first and foremost, when you try to recap this Wake Forest Miami game, right, this was the start of what needs to be accomplished this year, right? This past weekend against Wake Forest, this is what started your playoff run, right? This is your win or lose mentality where you cannot lose, right? It's win or go home starting from this past weekend against Wake Forest. You got the dub. Now it's time to move on to the next objective, which is Syracuse. We all knew before this season started, we needed to make the ACC championship. And in order to do that, this game in particular in Syracuse is going to be one of the biggest games in Mario Cristobal's head coaching career at the University of Miami. I tweeted it and I'll say it again. Before the season started, you circled that Florida game, first game of the year, whether it was for recruiting purposes, trolling, rival purposes, or just having that monkey off your back when it comes to rivals and understanding the task and what was at stake that first game of the year, knowing you were going into a hostile environment, knowing you were playing an SEC team, knowing that you had the guys in place to really get this W. And not only did we win in Gainesville in the Swamp, we dismantled them. We mollywopped them. We were the only fan base singing Tom Petty in the fourth quarter. And now you fast forward to now 10, 11 weeks in, and this Syracuse matchup, folks, is just as big, if not bigger, than that Florida matchup. And I think this team knows what's at task. I think this staff knows what's at task. And I think Mario damn sure knows what needs to be accomplished this weekend in order to get to that goal, right? And I want to say this before we move on to the Syracuse matchup and what to look out for, right? Another thing I want to talk about on this lovely Tuesday is a lot of these award finalists that are starting to come out in the woodworks on social media, right? We always knew, folks, we've seen it, right? Each and every week we see Cam Ward do what Cam Ward does. We see this team still find ways to win, and we see other programs go through similar battles that we did against Georgia Tech. We've seen schools that have gotten the upset, very similar to Miami. We've seen Heisman candidate guys like Travis Hunter, like Ashton Genty, and Dylan Gabriel have that one game where they're just not Superman, right? Just like our guy Cam Ward. But what you continue to see, folks, is the disrespect for not only the University of Miami program, but for these great players that are building this Miami team to get back where we need to be, right? And it starts with the obvious one in Cam Ward. Maxwell Award finalist, right, goes to the top players in college football. Who is the best of the best? Who are the MVPs of college football? Well, folks, there were 3 finalists that made the cut. Ashton Genty out of Boise State, Travis Hunter out of Colorado, and last but not least, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. Now, when you look at Oregon, are they the best team in the country currently? Yes, absolutely. I would say so. But they're a team that's also struggled. They barely got a W against Wisconsin, right? 3-point win. You look at a guy like Dylan Gabriel, who some of his best games ever this year in an Oregon uniform is really what Cam Ward is on cruise control, right? When you pull up the stats, it's night and day from Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward. And then when you take both of those guys off of their rosters, what is Oregon's record without a Dylan Gabriel? What is Miami's record without a Cam Ward? I'm sorry, folks, but Cam Ward means so much more to this football team than what Dylan Gabriel means for Oregon, and it's not even close. And the fact that the media continues to disrespect Miami and some of these great players on this roster this year is a slap in the face, right? And thankfully, a guy like Cam Ward, you know, he's a guy that doesn't really care about the personal accolades. He just wants this Miami program to get down to that ACC championship and win in Charlotte. Wants Miami to be a playoff contention team, right? And he had a recent question asked in an interview earlier today as far as his upcoming game against Syracuse, and it was very simple. This is the championship game. This is exactly the mentality you want a leader at quarterback to have, understanding how big this game is, not only for him personally, not only for his teammates, not only for this team, but literally the franchise of the University of Miami. It's been a long time since we got in this spot, right? You could go back to 2017 when we had our guy Malik Rozier at quarterback. That was the last time this team went undefeated at home. Double-digit wins in one season, right? We've been undefeated at home. We've had 10 wins. But we saw back in 2017, those last 3 games of the season, whether it was Pittsburgh, whether it was in Charlotte against Clemson, and then your bowl game opportunity, we failed, folks. We went on a 3-game losing streak, and everything we worked for that year went to crush, went gone, and people forgot about it, right? It was something that it was luck, right? This season doesn't feel like luck, folks. We know that we have guys at certain position groups that can be the man at any place in the country, right? That would get more respect anywhere else in the country if they weren't wearing that orange and green. So the fact that these leaders on our football team understand the task at hand, and it's more than just player accolades, really goes to credit for Mario and the staff, really pinpointing out the right type of players that we need in this organization at the University of Miami. And it wasn't just Cam Ward that got shafted at a finalist awards today, folks. It was also my guy, Andy Borgalis, the Lou Groza Award, Final 3. You want to go out there and say, yeah, Andy's only attempted 20 field goals this year. Well, a lot of that has to do with a potent offense of Miami and Cam Ward that really just throws the rock, throws the football, and knows how to score touchdowns, right? You're not going to get as many opportunities, but you got to look at the collective effort in the group. And not only this year, but what he was able to do last year in his whole career at Miami as a kicker, starting as a true freshman at that, right? And when you look at these finalists, you got a guy in Ryan Fitzgerald out of Florida State, literally the most laughable program in college football this year. Nobody wants to play for Florida State. Nobody wants to coach for Florida State, for God's sakes. And you mean to tell me you have the audacity to put a guy from Florida State at kicker over Andy Borgalis from the University of Miami? Again, straight disrespect for these players in the program and university. And of course, last but not least, Xavier Restrepo not being on the Biletnikoff semifinalists, man, it's just mind-boggling. This is the #1 wide receiver in program history when it comes to stats, accolades, everything he's been able to do for this program. I mean, some of the best players to ever suit up the game, not only at the University of Miami, but in general at the wide receiver position. These are all stats and accolades that our guy Xavier Restrepo broke in the last 2 years at Miami. I mean, what he's able to do for this program on and off the field, just like a guy like Cam Ward. I mean, again, huge slap in the face for the Restrepo family and X. But again, another guy who doesn't care about the personal accolades, right? He just wants Miami to get back to the top. And in order to do that, folks, it starts with this weekend against Syracuse. And I'm going to go right into it, folks, before we break down not only the Wake Forest game, but this Syracuse matchup later on tonight with our guy Cliff, Mondo, Brett as always, and our guy John Michaels, special guest tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. It's really simple. Coach Fran Brown said in a presser he wants College game day at this football game. He understands that Miami is the showdown, is their Super Bowl. This isn't the first time a coach or a university has treated the University of Miami coming into town as if they're Super Bowl. South Florida did it, right? Cal did it, right? And now Syracuse is yet going to do it again. And I think, shout out to Coach Fran Brown because he has done a tremendous job over at Syracuse. You want to talk about potentially Miami and Mario's next 2 opponents. You look at first-year head coach guys in the ACC with Fran Brown and potentially Rhett Lashley in the ACC championship. These are both first-year coaches that have done an excellent job turning around a program, and it starts with Fran Brown and Syracuse. You want to talk about a guy in Kyle McCord who leads the country in passing yards. Yes, folks, it's not Cam Ward. It is Kyle McCord that leads the nation in passing yards. But I want to say this, right? If you think we're going to go into this football game and the mission is going to be stop Kyle McCord and stop the passing attack, guys, this is their bread and butter. This is what they do on a weekly basis. Do I think our defense is capable of stopping them? Absolutely. Pittsburgh did it. Why can't Miami? But I think when you really look at this matchup, right, I think it's really going to come down to the trenches, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is this. The first reason why I think Miami has to do what they do in order to win this game against Syracuse, right? The first key is this. You got to be able to establish a run very early in this football game. Why do I say that? Going right back to one of my first comments about Syracuse early on in the show. This is the worst rushing defense Miami will face all year, okay? This is a team that's very undersized. You look at the tape, UConn runs all over them, Stanford, Boston College, Pittsburgh, the list goes on and on. This Syracuse team hasn't faced as many good opponents as Miami. And there's a lot of people from the outside looking in that is knocking this Miami team and saying that they haven't faced many people. Well, go look at the Syracuse schedule, folks. Their biggest win is against Louisville, who Miami smashed, right? We saw that they were able to run the ball at the beginning of the football game, able to establish some big plays, right? But when it came down to crunch time, both the offense and the defense made the plays necessarily to limit those big plays and turning those 7 into 3s, which is my second point, right? A guy like Kyle McCord, like I mentioned before, leads the country in passing, right? But one of the things that you need to really look at is if you have the number 1 or number 2 guy in the country in passing, like Syracuse and Miami does this upcoming weekend, you better believe your scoring offense needs to kind of match or replicate what your quarterback is doing, right? Well, Cam Ward's number 2 in the country in passing yards, and guess what? Our Miami offense is number 1 in the country, so it matches, it replicates. But when you look at Kyle McCord's passing yards, right under 4,000 passing yards, and you look at the scoring offense for Syracuse, they're right under 50. They're 42nd, if I'm not mistaken, in scoring offense. Why is that? When you look at the numbers, when you really look at it, this is a team that isn't really good in the red zone, isn't really a team that is good at making those big plays and converting them into touchdowns, right? And I think that is also a weakness of Miami, specifically in the red zone on defense, where when these teams that we're facing, once they hit the red zone, 8 times out of 10, they're going to score a touchdown over a field goal. It's just the way the stats lie. It's just what our defense has shown, right? Luckily, this past weekend against Wake Forest, they showed a different side, right? And this could be a great confidence boost for this defense going into the Syracuse game, knowing that they're going to have to create pressure, knowing that they're going to have to tackle in space, and knowing that Syracuse have many, many weapons on the offensive side of the football that we're going to have to look out for. It starts off with running back LaQuint Allen, the only running back that Syracuse really has, 190 carries, 800 yards, 12 touchdowns. He's the one back for Syracuse that they got, right? But this is also a team, like I've said before, they don't run the ball a lot. They don't know how to stop the run, and they really don't know how to start the run as well on the offensive side of the football, okay? Next guys on the list that you need to watch for Syracuse other than Kyle McCord and LaQuint Allen is obviously Oronde Gadsden II, American Heritage alum, Miami Dolphins, dad legacy at tight end as well. He's not only the leading receiver / tight end on the team this year, he was also the go-to guy last year. And as we know, with guys that are from South Florida and never got that opportunity to put on that orange and green, this is where their Super Bowl, comes into place, right? And this is a guy that's always been a mismatch nightmare for opposing defenses. And he's a guy that can definitely create mismatches for our linebacker and secondary group. So Oronde Gadsden II is obviously another guy to watch. And then, of course, Jackson Meeks as well, another guy that has 800 yards, 5+ touchdowns for Syracuse. They got 3 guys at wide receiver that really know how to catch the football, and they know how to catch it through contestants as well, right? Even though there's a hand in their face or there's a corner right on them, they still know how to make the tough catches. All 3 of these receivers are right up there at the top of the list as far as contestant catches in the country. So again, are you going to be able to stop the passing attack with our secondary? I wouldn't say so, right? I think you got to keep everything in front of you. But my third key to this game is this. You got to bring the pressure on Kyle McCord. He's the complete opposite, folks, of our guy Cam Ward. When things get crazy, when the pocket collapses, we already saw this past weekend. Cam Ward, he moonwalks. He goes in slow motion. Everything slows down, in the toughest moments, right? Kyle McCord, he's happy feet. He likes to dance. He's a guy that doesn't know how to stay patient and controlled. We saw with the Pittsburgh game, if you could rattle him a little bit, he can start to throw a lot more interceptions and make the wrong decisions. And I think at the end of the day, right, the one player that I think is really going to have to step up and show why he is that guy for our Miami defense in order for us to get Kyle McCord rattled is number 4, Ruben Bain. This is going to be the Ruben Bain showcase where he kind of reminds folks why he was the freshman All-American last year for this team. He's been somewhat inconsistent, right? He's a guy that's been a little banged up with injuries this year. And when he has had the opportunity, he definitely showcases what he can do. But he hasn't been that guy where he's getting 2-3 sacks, right? He's not the guy that flashes on the tape the most this season, right? You got guys like Akeem Mesidor, Ahmad Moten, and even a guy like Simeon Barrow as well that are really having great tape this year as Miami Hurricanes on the defensive line front. But I think this is the game where Ruben Bain has to become the monster of all of us knowing that he is and really just shaking up Kyle McCord in this offense for Syracuse. So those are going to be my 3 keys to the game for Miami to get this victory against Syracuse. Because as we know, folks, like I mentioned it before, the Super Bowl started last weekend. It continues this weekend. We know the mentality that the staff and these players are taking on with that 1-0 mentality. We see it on social media. We hear it in interviews. It's time to take that mentality to New York and Syracuse this weekend. And if we could take care of business this weekend, folks, I know I haven't talked about recruiting. I know that there's rivals and other fan bases out there that are cheering and having a good time with some of these flips and recruits that they're getting. And Miami's just right there in the background, right? Patiently waiting. Guys, we got Mario Cristobal as our head coach. One thing you should never worry about is recruiting, okay? We've been in these situations in the past with teams, with records that don't replicate of what's going on currently in today's age of college football, 2024, right? This season, this weekend, the stuff on the field is what matters the most right now for this university. It's not recruiting. It's not what guys are hitting the portal, what guys are leaving to go to the portal. It's wins, folks. As long as you win on the football field, the rest will happen. Okay? We've never been in this situation with Mario Cristobal as the head coach yet. We've never had where the opportunity is right there for us, where all we got to do is control the controllables, and that is the University of Miami. Let's make sure, Canes fans, that Miami does not beat Miami this year, because on the recruiting trail, we know not many programs beats Mario in Miami, okay? So I know from a recruiting aspect, there's fans out there. Why didn't Kellen Wiley Jr. visit this past week? Why didn't DJ Pickett visit a couple weeks ago? Why did Dallas Wilson not visit? Why didn't all these different targets, Ben Hanks, why did none of these guys visit this past weekend? Guys, it's all part of the plan, okay? Mario and the staff, they've had top 10 recruiting classes the past couple years. They've had major flips with a week to go, with 24 hours to go in recruiting cycles at the University of Miami. These are things that we know can be done. One thing that we haven't seen yet, folks, is can this team on the football field put it all together finally and get to where the expectations are finally met? If we finally do that, folks, the world, the country better watch out for what we do on the recruiting trail, right? And I just want to say this, okay? There are current players on this roster like Raul Popo Aguirre, right? There are commits currently in this 2025 class like a Malachi Tony, okay? These type of guys, along with other guys that are currently committed in this 2025 class, that are either signed with the program or that could possibly flip to the program, and yet they're not taking their official visits yet. You know when they're doing it? They're waiting till that first week of December to take those visits, just like Raul Popo Aguirre did, just like a guy like Malachi Tony and others in this committed class are going to do. So the Kellen Wiley Jr.'s of the world, the Ben Hanks of the world, the DJ Pickett's of the world, some of these other guys that we're trying to flip, it can still happen, folks. You just got to be patient. The number one thing on the docket, on the bulletin board, is winning against Syracuse. Beat Syracuse this weekend and watch the rest of the dominoes fall together in place. We can still get these official visits lined up, but let's take care of business on the football field and let the rest work out to where it needs to. Because like I said before, Christmas is right around the corner. And as we know, Merry Grinchmas, Mario puts on those loafers and he's stealing presents under the tree. So I do want to say, don't worry about recruiting right now. Don't worry about these award finalists. Let's worry about Syracuse this weekend, just like the staff and this team is doing. And we need all hands on deck. We need everybody bought in. We need this fan base to continue to rally around these boys and understand the objective that is in front of us. And it starts with beating Syracuse. But before we get out of here, folks, I need y'all to please make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button for us. And like I said before, please go to CanesWear.com over at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida for all your Miami Hurricanes, Miami Dolphins, Florida Panthers, Inter Miami, you name it. We got the Michael Irvin long sleeve Team Motion graphic shirt that you see him wearing on the sidelines every home and away game. You got the new 2024 Alpha Boost, only $129.99. I just grabbed me a pair this weekend, so please make sure you guys grab some. And of course, look, it's getting chilly, folks. Even up here in North Central Florida, the degrees are dropping. The degrees are dropping more than Florida State commits, folks. So please, you got to bundle up and make sure you get your classic reversible starter jacket. The OG ones only came in one color. Now you get two for the price of one, whether you want orange and green or black and white. We got it for $175 over at CanesWear.com, 2655 South University Drive, right there in Davie, Florida. So like I said, folks, please make sure you get all your gear at CanesWear.com and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be right back on later on tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern time with our second episode today on this great lovely Tuesday with our guy Brett, Cliff, Mondo, and special guest once again, John Michaels. We'll be talking about the Wake Forest game. We'll be looking for the Syracuse matchup, talk a little bit about these award finalists, some of the crazy fans out there, and what matters the most is can this team will itself to the ACC championship one more time. It's your boy Brad Tejeda, CanesWear Daily Podcast, only on the Fins Talk Sports Network, where